Boxing is packed with heavy hitters and larger than life characters. What many of us overlook is the mindset and discipline that separates good fighters from great ones. We're talking about the mental edge, the preparation, the composure under pressure. And honestly, I couldn't think of anyone better to break this down with than Chris Billam-Smith. Nicknamed the Gentleman, Chris worked his way up from small venues to becoming the WBO Cruiserweight champion. He knows exactly what it takes to compete at the top, maintain discipline every day, and perform when everything is on the line. So today, we're diving into his journey, his mentality, and what drives him to push beyond limits. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel below. It's completely free and helps the channel grow. Let's get straight into it. How did boxing come about? How did you realise, okay, that's the direction I want to go down?
I didn't start boxing until I was 16, so I went to college, did a sports course there, and a friend of mine in my car, who I met in my car, was boxing. So I started training with him after a couple of weeks of being at college, just to get fit for Sunday league football. And then that was in the September. And then in the January, I went and watched him box, and we were all there, me and his other mates that had known him, went to school with him and stuff, all chanting his name. And I thought, that must be amazing having all your mates there, sort of, there chanting for you. Must be a wicked feeling. And I think where I was the youngest of three boys, I was quite used to being centre of attention, so I quite like that. But yeah, then 10 months later, I decided then that night, I was like, I'm going to give this a go and just, have one fight and see what that's like. And 10 months later, I was in the ring having my first amateur boxing match. So, yeah, I've been training for about a year by the time I got round to my first amateur fight, and then and then won that and just fell in love with that feeling, and just loved the whole thing with the sport. For me, it was a individual sport where in football you can have the best game of your life and still get beat, and that used to, I think, frustrate me at times. Whereas I'd put so much effort in, and other people weren't as passionate about it as I was, and I was passionate. I was very competitive. I was very passionate about all sports, any game I ever played, from and whether that was football, hockey, or board games at home with my family. Most of the time I think they let me win because they couldn't deal with the tantrum. But so with boxing, I had more control over the outcome. I felt like I can give my all into that, and I think that kind of something that really hit home for me, and something I fell in love with, was that sort of the process of just bettering myself in boxing. And through the years, that's just what happened, and I never ever thought it'd be my job, even in after a long time. Never thought it'd be my job. I just loved it. So that passion was there, and I think it came at a good age for me in terms of 16, 17. A lot of my mates started going out drinking, and I did as well, but I still had that initial love for boxing, where that came before the nights out. I'd sometimes go on nights out and just drive, so I'd be designated driver all the time, even on nights out and stuff. So yeah. But so I wouldn't drink, but I'd still go out, have a good time and stuff. But so I think it came at a good time for me as well.
Just on that then, Chris. So you mentioned the opportunity to be part of an individual sport, and that process of working hard and training, and that discipline element of wanting to bet yourself, and how that could be emulated within the world of boxing. Was there a moment where you realised that you were good at boxing, and was there ever a moment where you were like, okay, this is something I'm good at here, and this can be funneled into something positive long term?
I think I always had the same mindset of effort and work rate in sport. I remember being 14, talking to my friend who we played football with, and we were good players on our Sunday league team, but we weren't in any academies. And I remember saying to him, like, if we just keep working hard while everyone else is drinking at the weekends and doing this, and keep grafting and put all our effort in, then we could make it one day. And this is at 14, where realistically, well, definitely we were never going to make it as professional footballers, but in my head there was still this belief that I could. So then when I turned to boxing, and kind of was juggling, the first 2 years I was juggling football and boxing. There was a few points where I thought I was good, or got told I was good, but good at what level? It wasn't good like on a world level or anything like that. It was good for my experience or my area, or the local area. And then it kind of got, okay, you're good in terms of my Western County region, which is the region that we boxed in. And then, I was like, okay, I'm doing okay here. And I'll try and win a Western County title, won that. I then went into a novice championships a couple of times and got beat early on, but on the third time, I ended up getting a bye to like the semi-finals of the national championship. So it's all the kids in the country, all the men in the country that had anywhere between 10 to 20 bouts. I got a bye all the way to the semi-final because my weight category, there wasn't many entries, and I didn't really feel worthy of being in the semi-final because I hadn't boxed to get there. But then I beat the lad by 1 point in the semis, and I thought, okay, well, I'm into the final now. Everyone in the country, and the lads that had boxed to get there in their regions, they boxed a few times, whereas I've got a bye. But the lad I boxed in the final had got to the final the year before as well, so he's more experienced than me. And I thought, okay, if I beat him, then I'm a worthy winner. Because otherwise, I feel like if I'd boxed someone else who had just got a bye there, I wouldn't have felt worthy of being a national champion as such. But I beat him, and then I was like, okay, I'm done all right there. Let's go into the open class championship. So it's all the men in the country in my weight category, all the amateur fighters, and they could have about 200 amateur bouts. So I went into them and I did okay, broke my hand in the pre-quarterfinal and won, and I thought, okay, I'm doing okay here. And it's just kind of progressed from there really, and every stage, every year was just a little bit better. Like made the pre-quarters that year after I made the semi-finals, and then I got a call up to the Great Britain squad for a trial, and I thought that blew my mind. I thought, well, I'm not good enough to box for Great Britain, but they're just the 4 fighters that get to the semi-final in each weight category get an invite to do an assessment. I did an assessment and wasn't good enough, but I thought, okay, well, I've only had 20 fights, I think, at this point. So if I can keep training and, another 10, 20 fights, then I might be able to make the squad and just keep putting the work in and be good enough to be considered as, to actually get on the squad. And that carried on through the years. And the year after I got to the final of the ABAs, the Elite National Championships, which is like a great honor to win. Got to final, got beat in the final, although I thought I won the fight. So I felt worthy there in terms of like, okay, I've proven myself now. And then I got assessment again for the Great Britain squad, didn't get on. Then I had a shoulder injury and then came back in 2016 and boxed and got to the final again. This time I got invited back for more assessments, got to the last stage and didn't get on. But that whole time I thought, okay, I'm good enough to box, and I know I'm not necessarily good enough to win medals in international tournaments, but I was good enough to learn. I was coachable. That's what I always thought was one of my biggest strengths, was I'm coachable and I've got the work ethic. So as long as I'm put in the right environment, I can achieve something. That's kind of how I always saw boxing. And locally, I was training twice a week with a coach. They're all volunteers, so they only do it twice a week, so you can't really ask for too much from them. But I was doing my, paying for my own strength conditioning and stuff like that in my early 20s, and trying to figure out better ways to, better myself as a fighter. And then, so that was just always the thing. I thought that, okay, I'm getting, my level's getting better, but I've got all the things that I need. I feel like now I need the right environment, and I thought Great Britain would have been that, like the setup in Sheffield, but they didn't take me on. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll go professional. And even then, I didn't think. I still thought exactly the same. I thought I'm good enough in terms of I've got the right mindset and attributes and coachability to get somewhere, but I need the right team behind me. And I was sparring up at Shane McGuigan's gym at the time, and obviously at that point he'd trained a couple of world champions. He trained David Hay and had some stars coming through, and I asked him to train me. And thankfully he said yes, and I didn't know what I was going to do if not, really. I just kind of said, well, will you train me? And if not, can you at least advise me on who to go to? Because I really respected him and his boxing opinion, and thankfully he took me on.
Based on obviously those experiences, I suppose in a weird way, your kind of path's different to maybe some of the boxers that I've come across. So a couple of boxers that I've interviewed on this podcast, they mention a lot of hardship and a lot of anger in them, and using boxing as a funnel to control that anger. Did you ever relate to that based on your experiences at a young age? And the reason I say it's a bit different is because obviously you mentioned that home life and that more collective nature in Bournemouth. Was it different based on the people you might have come across at that process for you?
I think I still had a massive temper as a kid. I definitely had a massive temper, and I think sports was always my outlet. And I think, yeah, I think, you know, I wasn't very good at concentrating at school. I did okay, and I wasn't, you know, bottom of the class or anything like that, but I just didn't have the concentration. I feel like once again, it's the same sort of thing. Like I had it in me. I just needed the right environment to get it out, and school wasn't that for me in terms of learning. So yeah, I definitely had a temper, and I think boxing has helped that as well as maturity, of course. But I think boxing's helped it both on a physical level, but also a level of respect and discipline that you learn in boxing. You know, my parents always brought us up, you know, good manners and doing the right thing at all times, and that was always very obvious, I think, for even other people and friends coming around my house, that, you know, they're really, we have fun and we're silly and stuff, but there's definite boundaries there. As a parent myself now, I see it more, and I'm more aware of how sort of my home life was. But yeah, I think it definitely channeled things into the right direction, and sort of gave me a place where I felt comfortable, and it gave me confidence, helped my self-esteem and stuff like that, which I think half the time is sometimes why, you know, anger and temper can come out, because of a lack of something within, you know. And I think that kind of gave me a lot of positives, boxing, and gave me a lot of belief in myself and confidence. So I think it just channeled it in the right ways. But yeah, I wouldn't say hardship as such. When I was a child, definitely not, but just channeled my sort of, I guess, nuances, and just channeled them in the right way.
Where did the nickname the Gentleman come from then?
I mean, the name itself, the nickname itself, came from Shane McGuigan, my coach. I'd had a couple of pro fights, and they like to always give everyone in their gym have a nickname of some sort if they don't have their own already. And then Kane, one day we're in the gym, and him and his brothers always were trying to think of nicknames, and we always joke in my family about I'm the golden child, because I'm the youngest. I've got two older brothers who are 7 and 9 years older than me. So, well, I was always the golden child, but I couldn't be called that as a nickname because I never won any gold medals or anything. If I got to the Olympics and won a gold medal, that I could have been called that, but that wasn't to be. So he came up with one day, and he's like, the Gentleman's a good name, like, you know. And I was like, but to be honest, I think just a bit more polite. I was so happy to be in that environment, coming from an amateur background where I hadn't really achieved anything, and had this opportunity, which is so sort of like Olympian. Shane like had Olympians asking to train him, and they'd said no. You know, for whatever reason, I'm in this environment now, which is the best opportunity anyone can ask for. I was so grateful for the opportunity, so I made sure that I was very polite and showed my gratitude towards him. And I think that showed through, and Shane came out of it. But I think with I do, you know, I like to think I'm well mannered and stuff like that, and I think that comes down to my dad and the upbringing and stuff like that. So and all, like I said earlier, about choosing the right thing to do. And I think that's thanks to my dad.
So you get the opportunity, kind of at 16, to take this seriously. You mentioned the distractional element and being focused and wanting to partake in sport and become a boxer. Then you get the opportunity to come pro. Can you explain to me a little bit about what that feeling was like? And can you reflect back on that time and what your aim and objectives were going into that moment where this opportunity is being presented to you?
Yeah, so I called Shane. I called Shane to ask, basically. I've been putting it off for a while because he was in America, and I wanted to choose the right time to ask him. And then I spoke to him, and he said, yeah, that we'll think about maybe even a part-time thing, sort of thing, you know. And I thought he was kind of just pieing me off on the phone, and I think he kind of was. And then went away, spoke to his partner at the time, and his brothers and his team, and they said, look, he's a nice lad. He's got other qualifications where he can help out around the gym and stuff as well as a real minor, amateur background. So I'm from a place where boxing's not huge, so it's probably easier to build people. And then he texted me and they said, oh, can you come into the gym tomorrow to spar George Groves? Because I've done a lot of sparring with George over the years. George was world champion at no, George was training for his world title fight. And we'll talk about you turning pro as well. And I thought, okay, he's getting me into spar George. He's not, and then he's going to just tell me, advise me to go elsewhere. So I got in, I sparred George, and I'd always done okay against George. He obviously got the better of me as the fighter he is, even though I'm heavier than him. And then in the last round, George actually dropped me with a body shot. And I was like, no way, like gutted, like trying to prove a point this day of all days. And he's dropped me with a body shot, and I felt absolutely devastated. Anyway, stopped the spar, and then afterwards I got showered and got ready, and we went they took me into a room upstairs, and I'm like, right, okay, Chris, we, it was me, Shane in the room, his brothers and his dad, Barry McGuigan, obviously legendary Hall of Famer. And they were like, right, we'd like to offer you a deal. This would be the deal. We'll give you a retainer. We'll put you up in a house up here. And my head's just inside. I just want to explode. My girlfriend, who's now my wife, at the time knew I'd gone up, and then I can't remember ringing her on the way home. She's like, oh, how'd it go? I was like, yeah, I'll talk to you about it when I'm home. But really, I'm like beaming ear to ear on the train home, just absolutely buzzing. Just couldn't believe that I've been given this opportunity that it's just one in a billion sort of thing. I just remember just feeling just this, even now thinking about it, like gives me goosebumps, that feeling on the train home, just beaming from ear to ear. Can't wait to get home and tell my partner to her face. Just an amazing feeling.
And then obviously that momentum happens for you, and then you get the opportunity to fight Richard Rickapor. Talk to me a little bit about that moment, going into the experience of this is your moment now to be shown as one of the best boxers in Britain as well as across the world. Can you reflect on that opportunity that got presented to you?
Yeah, so we've been offered. I'd sort of amassed a decent record. I was 8-0 with 7 knockouts, and then we got offered the fight, but it was like 3 weeks notice, and we were like, we're not taking that level of fight on 3 weeks notice, but we'll fight him next for sure. We got a little run out on another card, and then going into that fight, I had nine fights, 9 wins, 8 knockouts, and he had exactly the same, but he'd been in harder fights. And I just had this belief that I knew I could beat him. I thought I had the ability to beat him, and huge bill at the O2 on Sky Sports. So he was managed by Dillian Whyte at the time, and Dillian Whyte was headlining the show. So he was by far, the favourite going in, the home fighter and all that. And then we had the fight, and it was a close fight, and it was but I was really confident going in, and even when the final bell went, I thought I'd done enough to win the fight. Even in the corner, we thought I was 2 rounds up, but the result went against me. But it's hard to take, because I was just like, I felt like I've done enough, that I've never one to blame other people for the outcome. For me, I was like, I just look at it like I should have done a better job.
Is that kind of where that all builds into one, and you have to try and perform to that peak level again?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things. I think the fact that I had a newborn and my first child, who was, like I said, 4 weeks old. So I was coming home at the weekend to get some rest, but wasn't really getting any rest because, he's a newborn. And then trying to lose more weight than I've ever lost. So being stricter on my diet than I would like to have been. So underfueling. The mindset was like, how am I going to do this? I knew Isaac was a very skilled fighter, a very tough fighter. It wasn't a knockover job. So it was very much all of the accumulation of things, that just everything was against the clock in terms of making weight, being sharp enough. getting enough rest in, which was even more difficult because I got a newborn. Also trying to be a present husband and helper and father as much as I could when I was home. So yeah, it was a lot of things, just stress from all different sources. So I think that's why it was such a poor camp. Yeah, and then fight night, I didn't necessarily perform to my best. I just left everything in the ring. I was almost collapsing at the end of the fight of exhaustion.
So just on that then, Chris, so based on your personal experiences, you mentioned your child and you know, being with your wife and being a father and also trying to be a professional at the same time. Do you ever question the process at all? Do you ever think, is this for me a little bit? And you mentioned fight night as well. Did you enjoy fight night? I'm just interested on the whole process of it and then the outcome of, you know, it's in the hands of the judges, or if you're lucky enough, you can knock someone out. Tell me about you as the individual. Do you ever question you actually doing the sport and how that impacts your well-being in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of the dangers of the sport. There's a book by Tris Dixon, who's a boxing writer and has written many books. He's wrote a book on sort of, you know, CTE in boxing and the dangers that it brings. There's that, which massively has played in my head over the years. I've had to kind of come to terms with what I'm comfortable with in terms of and the way I go about things. So like, I don't do loads of sparring, for example, but we do enough. But we don't need lots of heavy sparring to get where I need to get to. And then I love fight week and I love fight night, but the process of being away from my family, I absolutely hate. And then camp is hard. You're always, you know, having peaks and troughs through camp. But I'd say now I'm kind of learning to balance it out. I just think the hardest thing now is being away from my family. But I guess it's, my dad worked away my whole childhood, and until a couple of years ago, he's worked away 5 days a week. So I need to know that I'm not going to be away my whole children's life, fight Monday to Friday. I do get breaks after a fight. I do get, I will retire, you know, in a few years' time. So I will have that time. But yeah, it's still difficult to juggle with, as trying to do what is right in every area.
How do you cope with the physical element, Chris, in terms of cutting weight and trying to drop weight? How is that for you?
It's difficult, like, for anyone, but I'd say I probably do it easier than most. Like, I'm very switched on. I did a nutrition course when I was an amateur, just so I knew when I did get a nutritionist, that they weren't sort of a cowboy nutritionist, and they knew what they were talking about. My nutritionist is James Moran, who's England Rugby's lead nutritionist now. He's got that job a couple of years ago. So a man who's very, very well known and well respected, and I know he knows his stuff. And he makes life easy for me in terms of we work together. But yeah, most of the time I understand the process of making weight, refueling, sweating out in a sense, and rehydrating and all that stuff as well. I do it fairly well.
So if I take you to the Okolie fight then, so can you just maybe, from a couple of things that we've just spoken about, talk to me about the build up, the fight itself, and obviously the outcomes of the fight, and the big moment for you going into that WBO title fight. Can you talk to me about the process of some of the things that we've spoken about preparation and mentally and physically, what that was like for you going into that world stage?
I think mentally was and the camp as a whole. Mentally, it was the easiest fight because I knew my opponent inside out. I'd done hundreds of rounds of sparring with Lawrence over the years, because he used to be in our gym, and then he left the gym. Well, he won the world title whilst he was in our gym, left the gym, was retained his world title, and then got this opportunity. I'd wanted to fight Lawrence for years from the amateur scene, and then even as a pro, he was #1 in the country, and I always wanted to box the best. So he was the best, and then, you know, the first time I got the opportunity to box him, because he'd been in our gym, was for a world title. So to prepare for him was very easy in terms of the preparation, because motivationally, it's a world title fight. it's at my team's football stadium. It's the dream venue for me. It's the dream opponent for me. It's someone I know well. So, and my coach knows well, as well. So I think in terms of motivation and all those things, it's very, very easy to be there mentally. The whole camp went very, very well. And then we get to Tuesday morning of fight week, and I've woken up at 4 a.m. throwing up and on the toilet. So not ideal prep. So yeah, that was. But we were on fight week now. I was like, oh, I hope it'll just be a 24-hour bug, and I'll be all right. I remember I had a cut as well, actually. The last spar I did, I got a cut on the Thursday before fight week. So I had a cut on my eyebrow, which we got stitched up and basically hid away for 4 days back home at the weekend, or three days at home at the weekend. Came back to London, sort of like make sure I'm not in any cameras that were in the gym filming other fighters and stuff like that. Then I was ill, had to have the stitches out on the Tuesday to go back home. That morning I woke up ill. I was like, okay, right, they're really chucking some stuff at me now in terms of like perfect camper. Then right at the end, we're here. And then, and then I was ill. And so, I mean, I couldn't keep anything down. I remember speaking to James, my nutritionist. He was like, mate, just try rice crackers, just plain, no, like lightly salted rice crackers. I was eating like a couple of them, and that's about the only thing I could keep down. That was from like the Wednesday till Friday. I probably had, I don't know, 10 rice crackers maybe in that time period. Had finally stopped going to the toilet, but that week we still got public workout to do, press conference to do before the weigh-in. So I'm just trying to put a brave face on for an hour whilst I'm at those things, and then go back and sort of rest in the hotel room. But for me, it was never a question of pulling out, because I'm never going to get that opportunity again. I'd rather just give it everything and see what happens. And then we get to the weigh-in, made weight very easy because I haven't been able to eat much all week. But on the flip side of that, I also didn't put as much weight on as I normally would, because once you refuel and stuff, you put on a lot more weight, and that's a disadvantage if you don't put on enough weight, because I mean, you can be vulnerable on your chin, but also the strength isn't there and stuff like that, and the energy is obviously not there from carrying a virus. So I just remember saying to myself, like, worst case, I don't do any warm up. I feel like crap. I don't do any warm up, and I get in the ring and give it all I've got, 100% of whatever it is, for whatever percentage I do have for 36 minutes. And I felt better by the Saturday, not 100%, but I thought, okay, I think in a weird way it calmed me down. So I thought, I can't go all out where, I feel amazing. I just use all this energy and just go into them and just end up tiring myself out or walking onto a shot. I think I just, I think it calmed me down and settled me a little bit, and thought, okay, like, I've got to do it. This is the way I've got to do it. And also I always flip the negatives. Years ago when I was an amateur, I managed to flip a negative. Like, I only had a short amount of time to train for an amateur bout, and I remember thinking to myself, what an even bigger achievement it is if I win with such little preparation. And that's kind of what I did with the Lawrence fight as well. I was like, this is going to be even a bigger, more momentous win, like huge win, because of everything that's happened in terms of the cut, the illness on fight week. Like, that's going to make me even more proud to get through it and win. So I kind of like flip the mindset in terms of thinking, at least I've got an excuse. Whereas like it could have been easy, rather than that, I went, right, this is going to be even more, monumental, because I've managed to overcome an illness and still win a world title on the best night of all nights. And obviously that happened. And then I think all that emotion I'd had and the hardship I'd had in the last week or so sort of came out as soon as my name was announced as and the new. And it's just so lucky to have that forever, on film as well, and always be able to have that sort of moment.
How do you celebrate becoming Cruiserweight champion? Is there anything that you do?
Well, first get back to changing room, and I just remember looking at the belt in the changing room, like, what's going on? Like, not know what's going on. Then first thing was stitched up, get my eye stitched up. Then press conference, then drugs test, and then look at my watch, and it's like 2:30 in the morning by the time we leave the stadium. I think I got back into changing room about 11:15. So I've been there for over 3 hours without much. Well, it's lots going on, but not necessarily celebrating. Um, so yeah, by this point, my wife had to go home and relieve the babysitter at 2 a.m. And we got a taxi back to the hotel, went back to the hotel. My team were all in my hotel room, and there was probably 10 of us in there, ordered loads of pizzas, and we just sat there and we were all just chatting and yeah, just talking about lots of things, but not not what a lot of people would do. There's no champagne bottles getting sprayed. There's nothing like that. It was literally just a hotel room and some pizzas and my closest team. Unfortunately, not my wife, because she had to relieve our babysitter with our 10-week-old, and we were going on holiday the next morning. So I got home at 7:30. By 9 o'clock, had to be on my way to the airport. I got home at 5:30, fell asleep at 7:30. Sorry, an hour and a half sleeping. Had to go to, funny enough, my nutritionist's wedding in Marbella, so I had to get a flight out there for the Monday. So we managed to make that. It was an amazing week. Had the wedding after it, and then had my mate stag do the weekend after. So I got to celebrate properly eventually, rather than just press conferences, drug tests, and stitches and a pizza in a hotel room. But yeah, it was an amazing week.
Well, what's the motivation like for you then when you hit that point? So you meet, you kind of hit the Everest of everything that you're trying to achieve, and you become cruiserweight champion. Well, what is the shift for you in terms of mindset? Of, do you want to be this champion for a period of time, or is there a doubt of fear that now you are the man that everyone wants to be? I'm just interested on how that might have differed for you based on the fact that you are now champion.
I think for me, it was you definitely gain confidence from it. It get like some people say it gives that 20-30% extra because you got the confidence, which is great as long as you don't slack off because of it. I then had a fight in December. That was in May 23, and then in December 23, I had a fight. And the camp was going really, really good. Stopping sparring partners. About 3 weeks out, I got ill and never really fully recovered. I don't know what the illness was. Just felt ropey for about 4 or 5 days and never felt like I got back to my best. So yeah, that was different. And then I had a real flat performance, and was getting beat and managed to stop him. But I remember just getting so much hate online for it, and like lucky because of this, that, and the other. And that affected me massively, funnily enough. Even though I was still world champion, even though I'd achieved so much 7 months before, they were complete polar opposites, and I felt a bit like a fraud because at times, because I was so disheartened, because no one's more of a critic than myself, to myself than me. But I think sometimes I need to look at what, even though I was getting beat, I still managed to do that once again. Even though I was ill 3 weeks before, I still managed to win. I still got my belt. I'm still champion. I think the motivation, it changed a little bit. But I wanted to become. I ended up fighting Richard Riakporhe again after that, which was huge motivation, because for me, he was the only loss on my record at that point, and that was the motivation. So, I think the good thing about having the high of the world title win to the low of a really poor performance, even though I won, and then going into Richard having the motivation of, one, I get to avenge my only loss. 2, I get to avenge my last performance. I get to prove to everyone what I really am and the best version of me. And that was another motivation again. So, and then after that it was unifications, and that was motivation again. After the second Richard fight, I boxed Zerdo. And yeah, and got to fight in a unification fight.
Yeah, it's really interesting how you mentioned the element of kind of shifting that purpose and shifting that motivational factor for you. There's loads of examples, and I'm sure you're more aware of this than me. Then when people hit their Everest, or they kind of hit that point where they become champion, they struggle to cope with the fact that they are champion, and they have to redefine their purpose a little bit. But it's reassuring to hear how you've kind of shifted that element, and you mentioned obviously that loss earlier in your career and having that as momentum to try and build on that and develop those ideas. One thing I wanted to ask you is you mentioned Bournemouth and just the Vitality Stadium where you've competed. You've competed at Tottenham, Saudi Arabia. How do you see the landscape of boxing going based on those big stadiums? Obviously, Bournemouth's your home stadium, but just the spectacle itself and the landscape of boxing at the moment. I'm just interested on what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think boxing's huge. I think the Saudi involvement has brought together more big fights than could have been done without the involvement, to be honest with you. I think a lot of fights that have been spoke about for years and years and never happened were finally made able to happen because of the investment from the Saudis. And stadium shows aren't cheap to put on, which is why promoters don't like doing them most of the time, because they're really hard to put on and they have to be pay-per-view, and they have to I'm pretty sure most of the time they make less money on those shows than they would, arena shows, because of all the production and all of the stuff they have to do. But yeah, it's it has to, the shows have to go right for them to make their money. So yeah, it's interesting. It's great. I've obviously boxed at 3 stadiums now, in terms of Bournemouth, Tottenham, and Selhurst Park, where I boxed Richard for the second time. So yeah, there's shows. I think boxing's in a good place in terms of the fights that are happening. I think the more investment and the more eyes on the sport, the better it is for the fighters, as long as they've got good teams around them, which is always a concern. There's a lot of people in boxing that don't have the best team around them and don't understand the business. I think it's a business that you can get into too easily without many qualifications, or much experience, which is always a fear from the fighter's point of view, because sometimes they're not looked after well enough or paid well enough as well as they should be, because at the end of the day, they're the ones getting in the ring and putting their lives on the line, and their health on the line every time, and their future on the line every time. And I think the disparity between purses is huge as well, in terms of what it can be to what it will be, win or lose. And I think you don't get win bonuses in boxing, but really you do if you're going to have another boxing match again. I've boxing purses can go up
Yeah.
anywhere from 100 to 600%, and they can drop by 80%. So you could have a 100% increase in a purse. Say somebody got paid 100 grand, for argument's sake. They could then, if they win, their next fight could be 200 grand. But if they lose, their next fight could be 20, 25, 30 grand. And that is just because then it's not a 70 grand loss in purse from that one fight. It's 170 grand, because if they won, it would have been 200 grand. And if they lost, they're now getting paid 30 grand. So that's the gap you got to look at. And I just don't think there's any other sport or job really that has that much of a difference in pay cut. And I think that's the pressures that people don't see, because they might see, well, 30 grand's great for a fight because you have 3 fights a year, but yeah, your team's taking 25% of that. That's pre-tax and all that things, training costs and all that thing, like expenses and stuff like that. But it's crazy. It's I think the boxers, it is good for them, the state it's in at the moment, because I think there is more money in it, which will only trickle down. And at the end of the day, us as boxers need to know it's an entertainment business, and business is what it is first before it's sport, even though we get into it because of the love of the sport. And but I imagine that's the same in every sport and industry as well, because every sport, if you get to a high enough level, turns into a business, and the disparity in pay is huge, I'm sure.
You mentioned social media and the distractional element and people saying that you should have performed better, etc. And then you fight Brandon Glanton, similar in a way of trying to distract you, and conversations and talks happening around the event. How did you cope with that as an athlete? And you seem, from our conversation, you seem quite strong-willed and strong mentally, but there's a part of you that, as a human being, can get distracted by comments, etc. Can you talk to me about how that was for you during that process of having that fight with Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I'd obviously lost my world title in the fight previous, which is obviously hard to take. And then I'm going to a fight. I'm boxing. I've headlined 6 or 7 shows in a row. I've been a world champion for my last four fights were for world titles. For that fighting for a world title. And then I've gone to being on at half five. I've headlined in stadiums which are full. I'm now on at half five in a stadium which is probably 3% full. So it's huge, but no one's really there. It's daylight and the atmosphere is not huge. And it was a weird thing. And it's someone who I'm picked to beat, but I know is a tough thing. So the motivation, I guess, was low. It wasn't a great camp. I feel like I felt quite low in that camp. I kind of just ticked the boxes, to be honest with you, rather than have anything extra or anything like that. So it was quite a difficult camp motivationally. And then we got to fight week and I'm there and he's saying what he's saying and he's obviously saying things which should never be said to any human being about, he's going to give me brain damage and stuff like that. And I guess in a way it really riled me up because I thought I have to beat him now. And I'm like, not doubting whether I put in enough work because I knew I had, but just really maybe not as focused on him as I should be. And I just remember speaking to a guy called Greg Meehan, he's my breathwork coach, but he works with a bit of mindset and stuff as well. And I remember speaking to him saying, mate, I just can't get what he said now at the press conference out of my head. I didn't actually hear it at the press conference, only because I couldn't hear it, but I heard it on social media after. And loads of people messaged me how dare he say that and things like that. And yeah, and then it really riled me up and I was fuming. I was struggling to sleep at night and stuff. And I remember speaking to Greg the next day and I knew what I had to do. I just had to speak to him to then hear him say it. And Greg was like, look, I said to him, I said, look, I guess all I've got to do is I'm really rolled up. I don't want to take a fight with emotion. I just want to fight and win. As long as I win now, then humanity wins in that small area where he's got a lot of kicks and views and whatever because of this comment. I was like, as long as I win now, that's all that matters. And that's the most important thing. And I said that to Greg. He's like, that's it. So you just got to go in there and fight to the game plan. Don't take the emotion in with you. Don't try and, go out there and do this and that and the other. Just go in there and do your job, whatever Shane tells you. And I managed to do that. And I think because there wasn't a huge atmosphere and stuff like that, probably made it easier because everything around me is calmer and a bit more serene than what would be a full stadium and stuff like that. So yeah, I just had to sort of refocus, speak it out loud, and I knew what was the right thing to do. I just needed to speak to someone about it, and sort of we both agreed that was the right thing to do. Go in there and win, and then I can say what I want to him after, and yeah, and that was that.
Yeah, I think you said it in the post-match interview around the humanity element, and you were kind of doing it obviously for yourself, but also for the human aspect of obviously sport and the sportsmanship that comes with that. You mentioned the fandom element, and you're competing at earlier stages of an event, and it might not be as popular in comparison to the other fights. And with your other fights, say for instance at Selhurst Park, did you ever feel that the fandom element impacting your performance? And there might be a sway of support for you, but maybe a sway for other kind of fighters that you're fighting against. Does that impact performance based on the overall atmosphere of an event?
Yeah, I mean, Shane doesn't really want me to box in the Bic again, which is my local arena, because it's so loud in there and everyone's in there for me that I just go out there and the game plan goes out the window. And that's kind of happened every time I box there. against Isaac Chamberlain was just straight out the blocks of just bang, 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 let's go from the off. And it was just a brawling fight. A second fight, I was just trying to walk him down, ended up knocking him out in the end. Before the world, that was the fight before the world title fight. And then the other fighter, which I spoke about earlier, about I was getting beat and then managed to stop him. Like, I haven't really boxed well there, and that might be because I just want to please the fans and I love the atmosphere, and it's too much in there. It's like 3,500 people, probably 2,500 of which are there to support me, and in a arena which is like a coliseum. So it's like the noise and the atmosphere it produces is amazing, especially for TV and when you're there. But from a performance standpoint, maybe not. But then you look at the other, like the Celeste Park one, where I'm the away fighter. There's a lot of Crystal Palace fans there. I remember standing in front of the stand on my ring walk, looking. I always look at the away from the ring, and there's a stand in front of me, like where all the sort of hardcore Palace fans always sit. So most of them probably want to sit there for their season ticket seat and stuff like that. And I remember them just there and all booing me, and I'm just like in the zone, like, just give me an hour, and you're either going to be upset or you're going to be on my side. It's going to be one or the other. And I remember there was two kids there, like, giving me hand gestures, swearing at me, and I was just like, you wait. And then so it kind of like focused me, and I kind of like being the underdog. I kind of like back against the wall stuff, but it all just comes down to being prepared, I think. And I think I've been so prepared for my biggest nights, the most, in terms of the Richard fight and the Lawrence night. Obviously the Zerdo fight I was well prepared for, but came up short against a better fighter on the night. But there wasn't an away fan base there or anything. But yeah, I think I've had both home and away, and they've been kind of my better performances, but for different reasons. But yeah, it's I do like having my, being the underdog, and I guess being an away fighter at times.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, and if you look at this, look at this in other sports, so they scrapped the away goals, didn't they, based on the fact that they reckon the home advantage don't work. And there's a lot of conversation around Saudi Arabia and the atmosphere there, and how that might actually impact performance in comparison to maybe a British crowd or an American crowd. So that's why I kind of asked the question on, does that ever impact the way that you see your performance to be played out, and obviously the adrenaline of that might actually impact that on how you perform.
Yeah, I think the only one I would say is that it affects me in a negative way would be that if I'm too riled up and I can't control that atmosphere. But I think if I box there again, it would be different. But I got into the sport because of atmosphere, because of us all cheering my mate on, and because I wanted that feeling. So I guess deep down there's something in me that just absolutely loves a raucous atmosphere. So yeah.
But what is the future plans for you then, Chris? So it's based on obviously your experiences, and there's been bits probably where we could have gone into a little bit more depth. I'm just cautious of time, but is there anything that you've got your mind set on? And obviously, from winning titles to thinking about the sport differently and having a different perspective, and you mentioned your family, etc. Is there anything that you have got your kind of mindset on going forward based on your professional career?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of years left. I want to become world champion again, and the way I'm always wary of the politics of boxing and the way the lay of the land. But the lay of the land could mean that I could be undisputed champion in 2 fights time. So it will depend on the lay of the land. But the main focus for me is becoming world champion again, 100% within my next 2 fights. Like, I have to be fighting for a world title in my next 2 fights. If it's not the next one, it has to be the one after. And I think that's the focus for me. But at the same time, I've got a family at home, and it's also it's more about money now than it ever has been, in terms of supporting their future with me only having a couple of years left, because I want to be present at home. My son will be going to school next year. My other baby's only 2 months old, so I want to be there a bit more for his first few years than I have been for my current, my oldest son. Um, so more than I've been for him currently. But yeah, it's because of the dangers of the sport, the what can happen. I don't want to be doing it forever, especially with my my style of boxing. It's very action packed, and I take a lot of shots in the ring, so I have to be wary of that. And then I think post career, I'd love to do some form of mentoring with boxers, and then maybe move into other sports. I love sports, so doesn't matter what it is. I'd love to have a look at that side of things as well, and maybe do some psychology courses and stuff like that as well, and look at all those factors, because as I've gone through the sport and through life, I think there's nothing more important than your mind. That is your whole life, whatever it looks like, is all within your mind and your perspective of it and your reaction to things, and that it controls everything. It controls your decisions, which controls your happiness and your reactions and all your emotions. So I think that's an area which I'd love to sort of delve deeper into and learn more about and help people.
You use that phrase, the lay of the land, and then you talked about obviously the psychological factors of being a performer. And in boxing, it's hard to control the controllables because people are making decisions above you. And you mentioned promoters and massive events and where you fit within that. Do you find that's difficult in terms of controlling your destiny based on that? So you want these outcomes to happen, but you're trying to obviously fit within a process that are in other people's hands. Is that sometimes a challenge based on what you want to achieve?
Yeah, I think so, because for me, I've always wanted to sort of keep my dignity with it as well and not sell myself and trash talk. But I've looked at fighters like Golovkin over the years, where he was just too good at boxing to be ignored. And I think if you're good enough, you'll get the opportunities. So keep the main thing. And that is what I can control, is my output and my effort into boxing and my skill base and my ability in boxing. So as long as I control that, then everything else will take care of itself. I will get an opportunity at some point. And that has obviously happened for me. And I think that's all I can do now in boxing is, look, I don't know what opportunity is next. I don't know what's next. I don't know when I'm going to be boxing, but I can control how ready I'll be. There's going to be world title fights before I box again. One of those could pull out and I could get called in last minute. So I need to be ready for that. And that's my view at the moment, is just be ready and give it everything. And then I can't have any regrets. The worst would be, oh, Chris, can you fill in next week for the world title fight? You get a chance at world title last minute, and I'm not ready. At this stage of my career as well, I can't not be ready for that, because they're going to be few and far between. So I'm staying prepped and staying ready for anything that comes.
And what about Bournemouth, Chris? Are they going to get Europe?
We got to, we're flying. I mean, obviously lost the City last weekend, but a phenomenal season, start to the season. The way the club's run is phenomenal. I love it. I was at the Forest game, where we won, and I met the owner was there, Bill Foley. I got a chance to chat to him for 5-10 minutes. So it's just a serial winner. It doesn't matter. Every conversation ended up talking about winning or the outcome being positive, and it was just so good to know that the club's in good hands, and then the players and the staff are great too. I'm certain this time next year we'll be playing some form of European football. I'll be shocked if we're not.
Chris, I just want to say thank you for your time and thank you for your open conversation. You've been very open and honest, and you've really dissected down a couple of important issues within boxing as well within sport, really openly. And I get why they call you the gentleman now, based on your mannerism and your politeness and the way you've expressed that. So I just want to thank you, and more importantly, good luck with your future. You mentioned those aiming objectives that you're aiming towards. I'll be definitely supporting you based on those. So I'll keep an eye out for that within the boxing world. But once again, thank you and all the best going forward.
Thanks, Christie. Thanks for your kind words. I appreciate it. And all the best to you as well.